Hey guys, I'm Ezekiel Gentle. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to tell you a confession. I, up until now, have been the problem. I want to give you 3 signs that you might be codependent. That's kind of why I've been the problem, right? I've talked about narcissism a little bit on this channel, and narcissism is something that can be diagnosed. I am not a clinical psychologist or medical professional, and if you are seeking medical advice, this is not the place, but if you're seeking my opinions, this is definitely the place for you. There are people who are narcissistic in tendency, and then there are people who have narcissistic personality disorder. Up until recently, I was a codependent, and that means that I would attach myself to people who exhibited highly narcissistic behaviors because it gave me kind of what I needed to hide in a relationship. With somebody else being very loud and out there and intense, I could kind of let their needs take the reins and never have to go through the pain of advocating for myself or um, having conflict or being self-sufficient. So I want to talk to you about my journey with codependency, because this is not prescriptive in any stretch of the imagination, but it is about how I've grown and changed over the years, over my lifetime, through this experience. Okay, so I'll tell you the backstory at some point, but for this video, I want to give you 3 signs you might be experiencing codependency and what you can do. Number 1, your identity is your relationship. When this happens, you have become so connected with the other person, and not just them, but the unity you guys have, the unit of both of you being together, that you are more attached to that as your identity than you are to yourself in and of yourself as your identity. You feel more like you when being talked about as part of the couple rather than an individual. Ways that you can notice this are: you don't have any outside friends or outside engagements. Both people in the couple are always doing everything together. What the other person wants or needs is always paramount. This is a big one because you'll notice that one of the common things, well, again, bringing it back to my experience, one of the things I experienced was constantly putting my needs on the back burner, my wants on the back burner. Even if somebody wanted to know, even if somebody was forthright in trying to be a part of that conversation with me, I would pretty much hide my true needs and wants and feelings so that I could have that conversation with them in a way that was, in my view, serving me. But ultimately, it's equally manipulative is what they were doing on the narcissistic side. Then the last way that you know your identity is your relationship is if they're off, you're off. So this premise that they're okay, I'm not okay, or I'm okay when I'm around them and I'm not otherwise, that's very important to recognize once you have arrived there. And I say that because I've been there, not just once. I've been there many times. And the whole reason I can even speak on this topic is because I have failed so miserably in this area that by the time I've picked myself up and started dusting myself off, I would be remiss to not tell the story of how that happened, because it might help one person. But if it helps one person find healing, then it's worth it, you know? And it took me kind of failing to find healing. But I think sometimes that doesn't have to be the case. Okay, number 2. This is the number 2 sign you are a codependent. Their experience always wins. When you are a codependent person and you're with a narcissist, no matter what you do, their experience is more important. And that's not just a thought. I mean, that's actually felt. That's a felt reality for the codependent person as well. And both people are kind of rallying around the narcissistic person's experience as being the authority on the experience, whether that's positive or negative. And here are ways that you kind of see that play out. You end up being gaslit in order to alter your perspective. And this can be retrospective, where you're talking about something that happened in the past and they want to help you kind of reframe it. Or it can, and you're telling them the story of what happened and how you felt, and then they give you an interpretation of something differently instead of just accepting that's what you said and that's what you felt. And then the other way you see it is failing to advocate for yourself. So when you don't advocate for yourself, especially over time, you will find that it sets a standard and a bit of a vortex the other person can't help but kind of fall into if they're a narcissist. Now, when they're not, they'll notice this right away and be like, hey, why are you not advocating for yourself? But if they're not, they will take that and run with it. And then the other way you know their experience always wins is saying no until you give in. This is a common one. I heard an amazing quote from somebody named Jenny in Oklahoma City when I worked in an Apple store there. She said, the answer is no. Say it early and say it often. And I've always seen the truth in that. And it's no different in a relationship. When there's a question brought up, if the answer is no, you have to say it early, you have to say it often. But here's the catch. If you're being pressed over and over to answer something you've already answered once, at a certain point, you either need to set a new boundary and say, hey, I've answered this question, we're not doing it. So if you keep asking me, we're going to have other problems, because basically it's showing me that you don't respect my request to not ask me this question, right? But you have to have the cojones to do that, right? So that's number two. Their experience always wins. Here's the last one, number three. Emptiness and despair are default states. I know this sounds really bleak, but a lot of people who are stuck in codependency and who are attached to narcissistic people are empty, and despair is their default state. And so that's why they cover it up with tending to somebody else's needs, caretaking, going over the top, going above and beyond to do something for someone, and allowing them to really pillage their energy resources, because that's what that relationship is ultimately. Is the codependent person is attaching themselves and saying, hey, I will be your endless source of energy, no matter how you want to use it, chaotic, peaceful, positive, negative. And that's what's toxic about it, is one person is just plugging in and saying, use me however, and then the other person is doing that and doing it at will. So both are guilty. Both people have agency, both people have the ability to make a choice. And this is where we have to kind of be honest with ourselves about our own reality. And sometimes it takes getting a third party perspective, but sometimes it takes you just going internally and finding out, how do I really sit with this? If you can't see yourself in the near future being content and grateful for that relationship and where it's going, you don't see a positive future for it, that's a reason to slow it down and work on it right away. And if you can't resolve that issue, it's a good reason to realize that, it's a big world. There are probably a ton of people that are compatible with the other person. There are probably a ton more people that are compatible with you. And so if you're causing each other more pain than joy, it might be time to part ways. So if emptiness and despair are the default states, here's how you know. You see the codependent person filling the other person's cup instead of their own. And what I mean by that is doing things for the narcissist that are basically what should be self-care, but they're doing it for the narcissist person to show that they want to be submitted to them, that they want to do whatever is necessary to maintain that attention and connection, and that they're willing to go to lengths that even put themselves low to put the narcissist on a pedestal. The other thing, when you're trying to uncover is emptiness and despair, my default state is the baseline of threshold. The baseline of threshold and chaos is high. When the standard feeling in the house or with your partner or with your person is chaotic, we're going to fight, we're going to argue, that gets really old really quickly. But if you've never known any differently, you'll just continue with more of the same. So more of the same of that chaos and discomfort is going to come if you don't rein it in and recognize that, okay, we're defaulting to chaos. This is not what we want to do. And sometimes that takes separating, but I don't think it has to. I think, and I'll get to that in a second. All right, baseline threshold. The last thing on number three, emptiness and despair, default states, is you've outsourced your happiness. This is really at the core of the entire codependent structure. I think when I was deeply codependent, and I'll say that I'm, you know, the way that I got that way is kind of a different story. But let's just start with that understanding. Let's say I've been codependent most of my life. The crux of it was, if I please the other person, they will be pleased with me. Period. I think you can sum it all up in that. And it shows two issues. If I please the other person, it's putting somebody else before the individual. It's glorifying them. It's putting them on a pedestal. It's saying they're more important than me. And it's something outside yourself that has to do with happiness and contentment, which is never going to work because those aren't an inside-outside exchange. Then the other issue is they will be happy with me. Why do we need them to be happy with me? Why do we need their approval so badly? And, some people who have worked through their issues have converted what their problems were into such a source of fuel that, for example, in this case, the validation that I needed from my father that I didn't get became a source of energy and fuel that I had and now have still, that allows me to go to that nth degree of energy. And it's because I had outsourced my happiness to him for so long, thinking that if I please him, he'll be pleased with me. Never happened. Absolutely never happened. So I finally had to realize that's got to come from within myself. And I made some changes. So, how to sum all of this up? Codependents will trade unpredictable satisfaction that comes from honest living for the exploitative predictability that comes from attaching to a narcissist to be needed. I'll just say that again. Codependents will trade unpredictable satisfaction that comes from honest living for the exploitative predictability that comes from attaching to a narcissist to be needed. I know this because I did it, and I made this video to hopefully encourage anybody else who's done that or is doing that to have an honest conversation with yourself, do right by yourself, and evaluate your own relationship with yourself and determine if you're really on a path to becoming stronger or if you're going down a path you don't want to. So, hope you like this video. Drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I'll see you in the next one.